Washington's frail hand reached up to squeeze Amelia's trembling fingers. "That man in there, he's going to take care of us both." Amelia closed her eyes and tried to steady her breathing. 3 weeks ago, she had been a struggling elementary school teacher in Detroit, working 2 jobs to pay for her grandmother's cancer treatments. The medical bills had piled up like mountains of snow, each one heavier than the last. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings on their small house. They were drowning and no life preserver seemed within reach. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Miss Washington? This is Margaret Chin, attorney for Christopher Romano. My client has a proposition that might interest you." Christopher Romano. Even people who didn't follow business news knew that name. The 32-year-old tech billionaire had built Romano Enterprises from nothing, creating software that revolutionized how hospitals managed patient care. His face had graced the cover of Forbes 3 times. His net worth was estimated at $4 billion. And for reasons Amelia still couldn't fully understand, he needed a wife. The cathedral doors opened with a groan that seemed to echo Amelia's inner turmoil. The wedding march began, played by a full orchestra that Christopher had hired. Hundreds of guests turned to look at her, their faces curious and expectant. Most were Christopher's business associates and society friends. Amelia recognized none of them except for the handful of people from her neighborhood who had come to support her. As she took her first step down the endless aisle, Amelia's mind raced back to that strange meeting in Christopher's downtown Chicago office just 18 days ago. "Miss Washington, I'll be direct," Christopher had said, not bothering with pleasantries. He sat behind a desk the size of her grandmother's entire bedroom, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. His dark hair was combed back, and his green eyes seemed to analyze her like she was a business proposal. "I need a wife and you need money. I'm prepared to offer you $5 million to marry me." Amelia had nearly fainted. $5 million would cover her grandmother's treatments, save their house, and leave enough for them to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But the catch seemed impossible to believe. "Why me?" she had asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're not looking for love," Christopher had replied matter-of-factly. "You're looking for a solution. Love complicates things. Business arrangements are clean, simple, and mutually beneficial. You get financial security. I get legitimacy." He had paused then, and for just a moment, something vulnerable had flickered across his features. "My daughter needs stability. She needs a mother figure. My board of directors thinks a family man appears more trustworthy than a widowed bachelor. Everyone wins." Now, walking down that cathedral aisle in her red dress, Amelia wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. The man waiting for her at the altar looked impossibly handsome in his black tuxedo, but his expression was as cold and businesslike as it had been in his office. This wasn't a wedding. This was a merger. Christopher Romano watched his bride approach with the same intensity he brought to every important negotiation. She was even more beautiful than he remembered from their brief meetings. Her skin glowed like warm honey against the deep red of her wedding dress. Her black hair was styled in elegant waves that framed her heart-shaped face perfectly. She carried herself with natural grace despite her obvious nervousness. But it was her eyes that had convinced him she was the right choice. Amelia Washington had kind eyes. His daughter Sophia desperately needed kindness in her life. Are you watching this story unfold and feeling your heart race with anticipation? If you're wondering whether Amelia will find happiness in this terrifying arrangement, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think Christopher's real reasons are for this marriage. Your engagement helps me bring you more stories like this one. As Amelia reached the altar, Christopher extended his hand to help her up the 3 marble steps. His touch was warm and steady, which surprised her. She had expected his hands to be as cold as his demeanor. "You look beautiful," he murmured, and she caught a hint of something genuine in his voice. "Thank you," she whispered back, trying to smile despite the terror coursing through her veins. Father Michael began the ceremony with traditional words that felt anything but traditional. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Christopher Michael Romano and Amelia Grace Washington in holy matrimony." Amelia tried to focus on the priest's words, but her mind kept wandering. What kind of man arranges a marriage like a business deal? What kind of woman agrees to it? She thought about her grandmother, sitting in the front pew with tears of relief in her eyes. This was for Ruby. This was so the woman who had raised her could live her final years without pain or worry. The ceremony proceeded with Christopher's responses clear and confident, while Amelia's voice trembled with each, "I do." When it came time for the rings, Christopher slipped a stunning diamond band onto her finger. It was beautiful, expensive, and felt as foreign as everything else about this moment. "You may kiss the bride," Father Michael announced. Christopher's hands gently cupped Amelia's face, and for a moment she saw something soft in his green eyes. The kiss was brief and chaste, but it was warmer than she had expected. When they separated, he whispered, "It's going to be okay, Amelia. I promise." Those words, spoken with unexpected tenderness, were the first thing that made her believe this might not be the disaster she feared. As they turned to face the congregation as husband and wife, Amelia noticed a small figure in the third row. A little girl with dark curls and Christopher's green eyes was bouncing excitedly in her seat. She wore a frilly pink dress and held a sign that read, "Welcome home, new mommy," in crayon letters. Sophia Romano. Her new stepdaughter. The little girl's genuine excitement was the first ray of hope Amelia had felt all day. Maybe, just maybe, this arrangement could become something real. Maybe kindness and hope really could lead to love. But as they walked back down the aisle together, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that the real story was just beginning. The terror of saying, "I do," was nothing compared to the challenge of building a life with two strangers who would now be her family. The reception would be held at the Romano mansion, where Amelia would spend her first night as Mrs. Christopher Romano. She had no idea that by the end of the evening, a 6-year-old girl would ask her a question that would change everything she thought she knew about love, family, and second chances. The Romano mansion stood like a castle against the Chicago skyline, all glass and stone and impossible angles that seemed to reach toward the clouds. As their limousine pulled through the iron gates, Amelia pressed her face to the window and tried to process that this would be her home now. The building was larger than the entire Detroit elementary school where she had taught 3rd grade just a month ago. "Nervous?" Christopher asked, adjusting his silver cufflinks with the same precision he applied to everything else. "Terrified," Amelia answered honestly. She had changed out of her heavy red wedding dress into a flowing blue sundress that made her feel more like herself, though nothing could make her feel prepared for what came next. Christopher's expression softened slightly. "Sophia's been talking about nothing but meeting you for weeks. She's excited." That was an understatement. The moment their limousine stopped in the circular driveway, the mansion's front door flew open, and a small tornado in a pink frilly dress came racing down the marble steps. "Daddy, Daddy, she's here. My new mommy is here." Sophia Romano was 6 years old and absolutely radiant with joy. Her dark curls bounced as she ran, and her green eyes sparkled with pure happiness. She launched herself into Christopher's arms the moment he stepped out of the car, chattering at lightning speed. "Is she really going to live with us now? Can I show her my room? Does she like tea parties? Mrs. Henderson said she might like tea parties. And can she braid hair? Mine's getting so long and Mrs. Henderson can't braid very well and—" "Sophie, breathe," Christopher said with a gentle laugh, and Amelia caught her first glimpse of the man behind the business facade. When he looked at his daughter, his entire face transformed with love. Sophia suddenly seemed to remember her manners. She straightened her pink dress and walked over to Amelia with exaggerated formality. "Hello, Mrs. Romano. I'm very pleased to meet you officially." Amelia knelt down so they were eye level. "Hello, Sophia. I'm very pleased to meet you too. And please call me Amelia." "But you're my new mommy now," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "Daddy said so." The words hit Amelia like a gentle punch to the chest. She glanced up at Christopher, who was watching them both with an unreadable expression. "Well," Amelia said carefully, "how about we get to know each other first? We can figure out the rest as we go." Sophia considered this seriously, then nodded. "That makes sense. Daddy always says good relationships take time to build, just like his computer programs." She grabbed Amelia's hand with surprising confidence. "Come on. I want to show you everything." Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. She was a kind-faced woman in her 60s who had clearly been trying to corral Sophia for the past few minutes. "Welcome home, Mrs. Romano," she said warmly. "Sophie's been counting down the minutes until you arrived." As they entered the mansion, Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The foyer alone was larger than her grandmother's entire house. A crystal chandelier hung from a 2-story ceiling, casting rainbow patterns on cream-colored marble floors. A curved staircase with an ornate banister swept upward like something from a fairy tale. "This is where Daddy and I slide down the banister sometimes," Sophia whispered conspiratorially, pointing to the staircase. "But don't tell Mrs. Henderson. She says it's not safe." "I heard that, young lady," Mrs. Henderson called from behind them, but her tone was affectionate. Christopher cleared his throat. "I should show you to your room so you can get settled. We can do the grand tour tomorrow." "My room?" Amelia asked. Of course. I mean, we discussed this. Separate bedrooms. This is a business arrangement after all. Something in his tone stung even though Amelia knew he was right. She had agreed to the separate bedrooms during their negotiations. Still, being reminded of the clinical nature of their marriage in front of his excited daughter felt harsh. But Sophia was already tugging on Amelia's hand again. Can I show her my room first, Daddy? Please? I've been getting it ready for weeks. Christopher checked his expensive watch. 15 minutes, Sophie. Then Amelia needs to rest. It's been a long day. Sophia's bedroom was a 6-year-old's dream, painted in soft lavender with white furniture and shelves lined with books and dolls. But what caught Amelia's attention was the small desk by the window, covered with drawings. I made these for you, Sophia said shyly, suddenly less confident. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I drew lots of different things. Amelia picked up the drawings one by one. There were pictures of flowers, rainbows, and stick figure families. One showed 3 people holding hands in front of a big house. Daddy, Sophie, and new Mommy were written in careful letters below each figure. These are beautiful, Sophia, Amelia said and meant it. You're a wonderful artist. Really? Sophia's face lit up. Mommy used to paint. I mean, my first mommy. She died when I was 4, but I still remember some things about her. She had pretty hair like yours. The innocent comment made Amelia's chest tighten with emotion. This little girl had lost her mother so young, and now she was looking to Amelia to fill that impossible void. Tell me about her, Amelia said gently, settling into the small chair beside Sophia's desk. For the next hour, Sophia talked about her memories of Isabella Romano. How she used to sing Italian lullabies. How she made the best pancakes in the world. How she always wore bright colors because she said life was too short for boring clothes. Is that why you chose the blue dress? Sophia asked suddenly. Because Mommy would have liked it? I chose it because it makes me feel happy, Amelia replied. And because blue is my favorite color. Mine too. We already have something in common. Sophia clapped her hands together. And you know what? I think Mommy would have liked you. She always said kindness was the most beautiful thing about a person, and you have a kind face. Christopher appeared in the doorway just as Sophia was showing Amelia her collection of children's books. Time to let Amelia get settled, Sophie. But Daddy, we were just getting to the good part. I was going to show her my favorite story about the princess who saves the dragon instead of the other way around. Tomorrow, Christopher said firmly, but his tone was gentle. Amelia needs time to adjust to being here. As they walked toward what would be Amelia's bedroom, Sophia skipped alongside them, chattering about their plans for the next day. We could have breakfast together and then maybe you could see my school and we could bake cookies. Mrs. Henderson taught me how, but I'm not very good at it yet. Christopher opened a door at the end of the hall, revealing a stunning guest suite that was larger than most apartments. The walls were painted a warm cream color and French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the mansion's gardens. A king-sized bed dominated the room, covered in luxurious white linens. I hope it's comfortable, Christopher said. If you need anything changed. It's beautiful, Amelia said truthfully. Thank you. Sophia bounced on her toes beside them. Daddy, can Amelia come tuck me in tonight? Please? It's what mommies do. Christopher and Amelia exchanged glances. This was clearly uncharted territory for both of them. If Amelia doesn't mind, Christopher said carefully. I'd love to, Amelia replied, surprised by how much she meant it. An hour later, Amelia sat on the edge of Sophia's bed, reading the story about the princess who befriended a lonely dragon. Sophia was curled up under a quilt covered in stars, hanging on every word. The princess realized that sometimes the scariest things just need someone to show them kindness. Amelia read from the final page. Just like you did with me today, Sophia said sleepily. I was scared you might not like me. Why would you think that? Because sometimes when Daddy's friends come over, they pretend to like me because they want Daddy to like them. But you're different. You listen to me like what I say is important. Amelia's heart melted completely. What you say is very important, Sophia. You're a smart, wonderful little girl, and I'm lucky I got to meet you. As Sophia drifted off to sleep, she mumbled, I think you're going to be the best new mommy ever. Walking back to her own room, Amelia found Christopher waiting in the hallway. He was still wearing his wedding tuxedo, though he'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. She likes you, he said simply. I like her too. She's incredible, Christopher. You should be proud. Something shifted in his expression. I am. She's the best thing I've ever done. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. Thank you. For being kind to her. For not making this harder than it had to be. Did you think I would? I wasn't sure what to expect. This isn't exactly a normal situation. They stood in the hallway for a moment, the weight of their strange new reality settling between them. Tomorrow, Amelia would wake up as Mrs. Christopher Romano, stepmother to a 6-year-old girl who desperately wanted a mother's love. The terrifying part wasn't the mansion or the money or even the loveless marriage. The terrifying part was how much she already cared about them both. 3 days into her new life as Mrs. Christopher Romano, Amelia felt like an actor who had been thrust onto a stage without learning her lines. The mansion was so vast that she still got lost trying to find the kitchen, and the army of household staff seemed to know exactly who she was and what she needed before she did. "Good morning, Mrs. Romano," called James, the head butler, as she wandered down the marble hallway in her green cotton robe. "Mrs. Henderson has prepared breakfast in the morning room. Shall I escort you?" Amelia had grown up in a 2-bedroom house where breakfast meant cereal eaten standing up at the counter while rushing to get to school. The Romano mansion had multiple dining rooms, including something called a morning room that was apparently different from the breakfast nook and the formal dining room. "That's very kind, James, but I can find it," she replied, though she absolutely could not find it and they both knew it. "Of course, ma'am. It's just down this hall, 3rd door on the right, through the conservatory." The morning room turned out to be a sun-drenched space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the mansion's elaborate gardens. Christopher sat at one end of a table that could easily seat 12, reading something on his tablet while sipping coffee from bone china that probably cost more than Amelia's old monthly salary. He looked up when she entered, his green eyes taking in her casual robe and the fact that her hair was still messy from sleep. "Good morning. I trust you slept well?" "Very well, thank you," Amelia lied. She had barely slept at all, too overwhelmed by the strangeness of her new reality to relax. "Daddy?" "Amelia." Sophia came racing into the morning room wearing a bright yellow sundress and carrying what appeared to be a stuffed dragon. "Look what I found in the playroom. His name is Smokey and I think he needs a friend. Can we get him a friend? Please?" Christopher's stern expression softened immediately when he looked at his daughter. "We'll see, Princess. First, let's have breakfast." Mrs. Henderson appeared with a plate that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant. Perfectly golden scrambled eggs, thick-cut bacon, fresh fruit arranged in artistic patterns, and toast cut into triangles. Amelia stared at it in amazement. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Mrs. Henderson asked with concern. "It's beautiful. I usually grab a granola bar on my way out the door." "Well, you're not rushing off to teach 3rd graders anymore," Christopher said, not unkindly. "You can take your time now." The reminder of her old life stung a little. Amelia had loved teaching, loved seeing the moment when a struggling student finally understood a difficult concept. She missed the chaos and energy of her classroom, the sense that she was making a real difference in young lives. "I was thinking," Sophia said, swinging her legs as she ate, "maybe Amelia could come to school with me today? For show and tell? I want to introduce everyone to my new mommy." Christopher and Amelia both froze. They hadn't discussed how to handle the outside world, how to explain their unusual arrangement to Sophia's friends and teachers. "Sophie, I think Amelia needs time to settle in first," Christopher said carefully. "But I'm settled," Amelia said before she could stop herself. "I mean, if Sophia wants me to come, I'd love to meet her teacher and see her classroom." Sophia bounced in her seat with excitement. "Really? You really want to come?" "Of course I do." Christopher looked surprised. "You don't have to do that. I can handle school things." "I want to," Amelia said and realized she meant it. "Sophia is part of my life now. I'd like to understand all the parts of her world." An hour later, they were walking through the halls of Preston Academy, one of Chicago's most exclusive private schools. Sophia held Amelia's hand tightly, practically vibrating with pride as she introduced her to everyone they passed. "Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson. This is my new mommy, Amelia. Isn't she pretty?" Mrs. Patterson, Sophia's 1st-grade teacher, was a kind woman in her 50s who greeted Amelia warmly. "So wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Romano. Sophia has been talking about you non-stop since the wedding." "She's been talking about all of you too," Amelia replied. "Thank you for being so patient with her during this transition. Oh, Sophia's one of our brightest stars. She's reading at a 3rd-grade level already, and her creativity is just remarkable." As Mrs. Patterson spoke about Sophia's progress and personality, Amelia felt a fierce surge of pride. This brilliant, sweet little girl was her stepdaughter now. The responsibility felt enormous and wonderful at the same time. During show and tell, Sophia stood in front of her classmates and announced, "This is my new mommy, Amelia. She used to be a teacher too, just like Mrs. Patterson, but now she takes care of me and Daddy. And she knows how to braid hair and she likes the same books as me." One little boy raised his hand. "Is she going to have a baby so you can have a little brother?" Sophia looked thoughtful. "I don't know. We haven't talked about that yet. But I hope so." Amelia felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, especially when she caught the curious looks from the other parents who were visiting that day. Christopher had remained at work, leaving her to navigate this situation alone. After school, as they drove home in Christopher's sleek black sedan, Amelia was still too intimidated to drive his expensive cars. Sophia chattered about her day. "Did you see how excited everyone was to meet you? And Mrs. Patterson said you could come to the Halloween party next month if you want. Do you want to? We could wear matching costumes." "That sounds wonderful," Amelia said, charmed by Sophia's enthusiasm. "What did you think of my school? Is it different from where you used to teach?" "Very different," Amelia thought. Preston Academy had small class sizes, the latest technology and resources that most public schools could only dream of. But she didn't want to dampen Sophia's excitement. "It's a beautiful school and your teacher clearly cares about you very much." When they arrived home, Christopher was waiting in his study, still in his business suit but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. He looked up from his computer when they entered. "How was the school visit?" he asked. "Amazing." Sophia launched into a detailed recap of the entire day, including the boys' question about babies, which made both Christopher and Amelia look uncomfortable. After Sophia skipped off to play with her dolls, Christopher turned to Amelia. "You didn't have to go to her school today. I usually handle those things." "I know I didn't have to. I wanted to." Amelia settled into one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "Christopher, I know this marriage is a business arrangement, but Sophia doesn't understand that. To her, I'm her new mother. I need to act like it." "And what does that mean exactly?" Amelia considered her words carefully. "It means I'm not going to be a distant stepmother who only shows up for dinner. It means I want to know about her friends, her schoolwork, her fears, her dreams. It means I want to be present in her life, not just present in your house." Christopher studied her for a long moment. "That's more than I expected when I offered you this arrangement." "Maybe it's more than I expected too," Amelia admitted. "But that little girl has already worked her way into my heart. I can't just pretend to care about her, Christopher. I do care about her." Something shifted in Christopher's expression, a crack in his carefully maintained emotional armor. "She cares about you too. More than I've seen her care about anyone since Isabella died." The mention of his late wife created a moment of awkward silence. Amelia wondered if she would always feel like she was trying to fill an impossible void, competing with the memory of a woman who had been genuinely loved. "I'm not trying to replace her mother," Amelia said quietly. "I could never do that. But I can try to be someone who loves her and supports her going forward." "And what about me?" Christopher asked suddenly. "Are you planning to try to love me too?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with complications neither of them was ready to address. Amelia felt her heart speed up as she looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since they'd met. Christopher Romano was undeniably handsome, with those striking green eyes and dark hair that always looked perfectly styled. But more than that, she was beginning to see glimpses of depth beneath his businesslike exterior. The way he softened when he looked at Sophia. The way he had defended Amelia's place at the school today by allowing her to go. The way he was asking this question now with what seemed like genuine curiosity rather than mere politeness. "I don't know," Amelia answered honestly. "I know that's not what you're paying me for. But I think it might be impossible to live in the same house, to raise a child together, and not develop some kind of feelings." Christopher was quiet for a long moment. "This arrangement was supposed to be simple." "Nothing about love is simple," Amelia replied. "Even the business kind." That evening, as Amelia was helping Sophia with her homework at the kitchen table, the little girl looked up from her math problems with a serious expression. "Amelia? Are you happy living here with us?" The question caught Amelia off guard. "What made you ask that? You sometimes get a sad look on your face like when you were watching me at school today. Like you were thinking about something that made you miss something." Sophia was more perceptive than Amelia had given her credit for. She had been thinking about her old classroom, her former students, the life she had given up to be here. "I do miss some things about my old life," Amelia said carefully. "But that doesn't mean I'm not happy here. Sometimes people can feel two different things at the same time." Like how I love living in this big house but sometimes I miss our old apartment where me and Daddy lived before Mommy died? Exactly like that. Sophia nodded solemnly. Daddy says missing things is normal, but we have to focus on the good things that are happening now too. Your daddy is very wise. He is. And you know what? I think you're going to love it here once you get used to it. And I think Daddy's going to love having you here too, even if he's too shy to say so. As Amelia tucked Sophia into bed that night, reading another story about brave princesses and friendly dragons, she reflected on her strange new life. 3 days ago, she had been a struggling teacher with no prospects and mounting debts. Now she lived in a mansion, wore designer clothes, and had a sweet little girl calling her new mommy. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, just until Sophia was older and Christopher's business reputation was more secure. But as Sophia drifted off to sleep, whispering, "Good night, Amelia. I love you," Amelia began to wonder if any of them would be able to let go when the time came. Do you think Amelia is falling for Christopher and Sophia faster than she expected? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update on this heartwarming journey. Finding her place in the Romano household was more complicated than Amelia had imagined, but as she settled into her own luxurious bed that night, she realized that for the first time in years, she felt like she might actually belong somewhere. 2 weeks into her new life, Amelia had established something resembling a routine. She woke early to have breakfast with Sophia, spent the morning reading or exploring the mansion's extensive library, picked Sophia up from school, and devoted her afternoons to helping with homework and playing games. Christopher usually arrived home around 7 for dinner, and they maintained polite conversation while Sophia chattered about her day. It was a pleasant but distant arrangement, like being very civilized roommates who happened to share responsibility for a 6-year-old. Christopher remained cordial but reserved, treating Amelia with the same professional courtesy he showed his business associates. Amelia told herself this was exactly what she had signed up for. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep in her enormous bed in her beautiful but lonely room, she found herself wondering what it would be like if this were real. If Christopher looked at her the way he looked at his daughter. If their conversations went beyond logistics and politeness. If this mansion felt like home instead of a very luxurious hotel. Everything changed on a Tuesday night when Sophia woke up screaming. Amelia bolted upright in her bed, instantly alert. The clock on her nightstand read 2:17 a.m., and Sophia's cries were echoing down the hallway. Without thinking, Amelia threw on her green cotton robe and ran toward the sound. She found Sophia sitting up in her bed, tears streaming down her face, calling for her mommy. Not Amelia, her real mommy. Isabella. "Sophia, sweetie, it's okay," Amelia said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You had a nightmare. You're safe now." "I want my mommy," Sophia sobbed. "The bad man was chasing me and mommy always made the bad dreams go away, but she's not here and I can't remember what she used to sing." Amelia's heart broke for the little girl. Without hesitation, she climbed into the bed and pulled Sophia into her arms, holding her close while she cried. "Sure, it's okay. The bad dream is gone now. You're safe." "But I can't remember her song," Sophia hiccuped. "What if I forget everything about her?" "You won't forget," Amelia said softly, stroking Sophia's dark curls. "Love like that doesn't disappear. It stays in your heart forever, even when you can't remember all the details." "How do you know?" "Because I lost someone important too," Amelia said. "My mom died when I was not much older than you. And sometimes I can't remember exactly what her voice sounded like, but I never forget how safe I felt when she hugged me. That feeling stays." Sophia curled closer to Amelia. "Did someone take care of you after she died?" "My grandmother did. She sang me different songs than my mom used to, but they helped chase away the bad dreams too." Could you sing to me? Just until I fall asleep?" Amelia had never been much of a singer, but she remembered the lullabies her grandmother used to hum. Softly, she began to sing an old spiritual about peace and comfort, her voice barely above a whisper in the dark room. "Hush now, baby, don't you cry, mama's gonna sing you a lullaby and when the morning sun comes up everything's gonna be all right." Sophia's breathing gradually became deeper and more regular, but she didn't let go of Amelia. When the song ended, she whispered, "That was beautiful. Will you stay with me? I don't want to have more bad dreams." "Of course I'll stay." Amelia settled back against the pillows, planning to wait just until Sophia fell deeply asleep before returning to her own room. But the bed was comfortable and the weight of the little girl in her arms was soothing, and before she knew it, she had drifted off too. That's how Christopher found them the next morning. He had gotten up early to catch a conference call with London and had stopped by Sophia's room to check on her before heading to his office. What he saw made him freeze in the doorway. His daughter was curled up against Amelia like a kitten, both of them sleeping peacefully in the early morning light streaming through the windows. Amelia's dark hair was spread across the pillow, and one protective arm was wrapped around Sophia. They looked like they belonged together, like a real mother and daughter. For the first time since Isabella's death, Christopher felt something crack open in his chest. Something he had carefully locked away and buried under work and responsibility and the determination never to be vulnerable again. This woman, who had married him for money and security, was holding his daughter like she was precious. Like she genuinely cared about more than just the arrangement they had made. "Daddy?" Sophia's sleepy voice interrupted his thoughts. She blinked at him with confusion, then seemed to remember the night before. "I had a bad dream, but Amelia came and she sang to me and made it better." "I heard you crying," Amelia said softly, sitting up and looking embarrassed. "I hope you don't mind that I—" "Thank you," Christopher said, his voice rougher than he intended. "I'm usually a heavy sleeper. I might not have woken up." "Amelia sings really pretty songs," Sophia announced, now fully awake and apparently over her nightmare. "And she knows about missing mommies because her mommy died too." Christopher's eyes found Amelia's and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of shared loss and the complicated ways people tried to heal from it. "Well," Christopher said, clearing his throat, "I suppose we should get ready for breakfast. And school." As they headed toward their respective rooms to get dressed, Christopher called after Amelia. "Could I speak with you for a moment? Privately?" They stopped in the hallway between their bedrooms. Christopher ran a hand through his hair, looking more uncertain than Amelia had ever seen him. "What you did last night," he began, comforting her, staying with her, "that wasn't part of our agreement." Amelia's heart sank. "I know. I'm sorry if I overstepped." "No," Christopher interrupted. "I'm trying to say thank you. Since Isabella died, I've been the only one to handle Sophia's nightmares. She hasn't let anyone else comfort her. The fact that she trusted you, that she let you help her, it means more than you know." Relief flooded through Amelia. "She's a special little girl. I couldn't just ignore her when she was scared." You could have. "You could have come to get me and let me handle it. That would have been within the bounds of our arrangement." Christopher studied her face carefully. "But you didn't. You treated her like she was your own child." Amelia struggled for words. "I suppose I did." "Why?" It was such a simple question, but the answer was complicated. Because the sound of a child in distress bypassed every logical thought. Because Sophia's pain had felt like her own pain. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, without meaning to, Amelia had started to love this little girl. "Because that's what you do for family," she said finally. Christopher was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what we are? Family?" "I don't know," Amelia answered honestly. "I know it's not what we planned. But maybe some of the best things aren't planned." That afternoon, when Christopher came home from work, he found Amelia and Sophia in the kitchen, both covered in flour and giggling over what appeared to be a baking disaster. "We were trying to make cookies," Sophia explained, "but we might have used salt instead of sugar in the first batch." "They were terrible," Amelia added with a laugh. "But we figured it out for batch number 2. Christopher looked at them, really looked at them, and something inside him shifted. Amelia was wearing a bright red apron over her sundress, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, flour on her cheek. She looked nothing like the nervous woman in the red wedding dress who had married him 3 weeks ago. She looked relaxed, happy at home. "Would you like to try one?" Sophia asked, holding up a slightly lopsided chocolate chip cookie. "Amelia let me crack the eggs and everything." Christopher bit into the cookie. It was actually quite good, warm and sweet and made with obvious care. "This is delicious." "Really?" Amelia looked pleased. "I haven't baked in years. I wasn't sure I remembered how." "My mommy used to bake," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "But these taste different. Not bad different, just different. For the first time, Christopher didn't feel a sharp pang of pain at the mention of Isabella. Instead, he felt something that might have been gratitude that Sophia was making new memories, different but equally sweet. "Would you like to help us finish decorating them?" Amelia asked him. Sophia has very specific ideas about frosting techniques. Christopher looked at his watch. He had planned to review financial reports before dinner. He had calls to return and emails to answer. His well-ordered evening routine was waiting. Instead, he rolled up his sleeves and reached for a frosting bag. For the next hour, the three of them decorated cookies and talked and laughed together. Sophia appointed herself the quality control supervisor, testing each cookie to make sure it met her standards. Amelia showed Christopher how to pipe perfect star shapes with the frosting. Christopher found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. This is what family dinner could be like, he thought, watching Amelia help Sophia clean frosting off her fingers. Not formal meals served in the dining room with polite conversation, but easy togetherness in the kitchen, talking and laughing and making messes together. When it was time to put Sophia to bed, she asked both Amelia and Christopher to read her bedtime story together. As they sat on either side of her bed, taking turns reading about a brave princess who saved her kingdom with kindness instead of swords, Christopher found himself watching Amelia as much as the book. She was completely engaged with Sophia, doing different voices for each character and making the story come alive. When Sophia giggled at the dragon's silly jokes, Amelia's face lit up with genuine joy. This wasn't performance or obligation. This was real affection, real investment in his daughter's happiness. After Sophia fell asleep, Christopher walked Amelia to her bedroom door, just as he had every night since she moved in. But tonight felt different. "Thank you," he said. "For today. For last night. For all of it." "You don't have to thank me, Christopher. I care about her. I can see that." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "I have to admit, when I arranged this marriage, I thought I was hiring someone to play a role. I didn't expect." "You didn't expect it to feel real?" "I didn't expect you to be real," he said quietly. "The kindness, the genuine care. I thought it would be an act." Amelia stepped closer to him, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes. "It's not an act, Christopher. I know this started as a business arrangement, but what I feel for Sophia, what I'm starting to feel for both of you, that's completely real." For a moment, Christopher looked like he might say something important, something that would change the careful balance they had maintained. But then he stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. "Good night, Amelia." "Good night." But as Amelia closed her bedroom door, she could have sworn she heard him whisper, "Thank you for making us feel like a family." The breakthrough had happened. The walls were starting to come down. And for the first time since their wedding day, Amelia allowed herself to hope that this arrangement might become something neither of them had dared to dream of. Something real. Something lasting. Something that looked an awful lot like love. The shift in their household dynamics was subtle but unmistakable. Over the following weeks, Christopher began coming home earlier from work, often arriving in time to help with Sophia's homework or join them for afternoon snacks in the kitchen. Their dinner conversations grew longer and more personal, moving beyond logistics to include stories about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Amelia learned that Christopher had grown up in a working-class Italian family in Boston, that his father had been a mechanic who dreamed of his son having opportunities he never had. Christopher had earned his first computer at age 12 by doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, and he taught himself programming by staying up late with library books and online tutorials. "I wanted to build something that mattered," he told her one evening as they cleaned up after dinner while Sophia played with her dolls in the living room. "Not just make money but actually help people." "And you did," Amelia said, drying the dishes he washed. "Your hospital management software has helped thousands of patients get better care." Christopher looked surprised. "You researched my work?" "Of course I did. I wanted to understand what was so important that it kept you away from home until 8 o'clock every night." "And what conclusion did you reach?" Amelia considered her words carefully. "I think you use work to avoid dealing with grief. And I think you're afraid that if you stop moving, stop building, stop achieving, you'll have to face how much losing Isabella hurt you." Christopher's hands stilled in the soapy water. "You don't know anything about my marriage." "You're right, I don't," Amelia said gently. "But I know about loss. And I know that sometimes it feels easier to stay busy than to sit with the pain." For a moment, Christopher said nothing. Then quietly, "She was my college sweetheart. We dated for 6 years before I got up the courage to propose. She was the kindest person I've ever known, patient with my workaholic tendencies, endlessly supportive of my crazy business ideas. She sounds wonderful." She was. When Sophia was born, Isabella quit her job as a pediatric nurse to stay home full-time. She said she wanted to be present for every moment of Sophia's childhood, all the little milestones that working parents sometimes miss. Amelia heard the pain in his voice and felt an unexpected pang of something that might have been jealousy. Isabella had been truly loved, deeply cherished. Their marriage had been built on years of genuine relationship, not a desperate business arrangement. "The cancer came out of nowhere," Christopher continued. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed on a Thursday, gone 6 months later. Isabella spent her final weeks making photo albums for Sophia, recording bedtime stories, writing letters for birthdays and graduations she knew she'd miss. She was thinking about Sophia's future even while she was dying, Amelia observed. That's incredible love. It is. And for the past 2 years, I've been trying to be enough parent for both of us. But Sophia needed something I couldn't give her. She needed maternal love, the kind that comes naturally to women like you and Isabella. The comparison made Amelia's chest tighten. Christopher, I'm not Isabella. I can't replace what she gave you both. I'm not asking you to replace her, Christopher said, turning to face her fully. I'm starting to understand that maybe you don't have to. Maybe Sophia can love you both in different ways for different reasons. Their eyes met across the kitchen, and Amelia felt something electric pass between them. This was the most honest conversation they'd had since their wedding day, and it was shifting something fundamental in their relationship. What about you? She asked softly. Can you love us both too? Christopher's breath caught. For a moment, Amelia thought he might answer, might acknowledge the growing connection between them. But Sophia's voice interrupted from the living room. Daddy? Amelia. Come see what I built with my blocks. The moment passed, but its echo lingered as they went to admire Sophia's elaborate castle, complete with towers and bridges and tiny flags made from torn paper. It's for a princess who's also a teacher, Sophia explained. She teaches all the dragon babies how to read and write, and in return the dragons protect her kingdom from bad guys. That's a wonderful story, Amelia said, settling on the floor beside Sophia. What made you think of a princess who teaches? Because you used to be a teacher and now you're like a princess living in our castle, so I thought maybe you could do both. Christopher sat down on Sophia's other side, his long legs folding awkwardly on the carpet. And what does the king do in this story? Oh, the king works very hard to make sure everyone in the kingdom has everything they need, Sophia said matter-of-factly. But he's learning that he needs to spend more time with the princess and the dragon babies too. Amelia and Christopher exchanged amused glances over Sophia's head. Apparently, a 6-year-old's perspective on their family dynamics was clearer than either adult wanted to admit. That weekend, Christopher surprised both Sophia and Amelia by suggesting they visit the Lincoln Park Zoo together. It was the first family outing they had taken since the wedding, and Amelia felt nervous about being seen in public as the Romano family. Are you sure about this? She asked as they got ready to leave. She had chosen a cheerful maroon sundress that made her feel confident, but she still worried about living up to the expectations that came with being married to Chicago's most eligible bachelor. Sophia's been asking to go for weeks, Christopher replied, but Amelia noticed he had chosen casual clothes too, jeans and a navy blue polo shirt instead of his usual business attire. Besides, we can't hide in the mansion forever. The zoo was crowded with families enjoying the beautiful October day. As they walked from exhibit to exhibit, Amelia began to relax. Sophia was in her element, chattering excitedly about every animal they encountered and asking a million questions that both adults tried their best to answer. Look, the penguins are swimming. Sophia pressed her face against the glass of the penguin exhibit. They're so graceful in the water. Can we learn to swim like that, Amelia? I think humans might need a little more practice than penguins, Amelia laughed. But we could certainly try swimming lessons if you want. Really? Daddy, can we? Please? Christopher looked at Amelia with surprise. You'd be willing to take her to swimming lessons? Of course. It sounds like fun. As they continued through the zoo, Christopher found himself watching Amelia as much as the animals. She was completely engaged with Sophia, pointing out interesting facts she remembered from nature documentaries, helping Sophia climb on the interactive exhibits, taking dozens of pictures with his phone when Sophia posed with various statues. At the petting zoo, Amelia knelt in the dirt in her nice dress, helping Sophia feed goats and sheep without any concern for the mess. When a particularly bold goat tried to eat Sophia's hair ribbon, Amelia's laugh rang out clear and joyful. She's really something, said a voice beside him. Christopher turned to find an older man watching Amelia and Sophia with a warm smile. Your wife, the man clarified. She's wonderful with your daughter. You can see how much they adore each other. Yes, Christopher said and realized he meant it completely. She is wonderful. On the drive home, Sophia fell asleep in her car seat, exhausted from their adventure. Christopher glanced at Amelia in the passenger seat and saw her looking out the window with a thoughtful expression. What are you thinking about? He asked. Today was really nice, she said. It felt like a real family? Yeah, like a real family. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived home, Christopher carried the sleeping Sophia to her room while Amelia gathered their things from the car. As they met in the hallway afterward, Christopher seemed to be wrestling with something he wanted to say. "Amelia, about our arrangement." "What about it?" I think we need to acknowledge that it's changed. What's happening between us, it's not what either of us planned." Amelia's heart began to race. "No, it's not. I don't want you to feel pressured," Christopher continued. "I know you married me for financial security and that's still valid. But I also don't want us to pretend that there isn't something real developing here." "There is something real," Amelia admitted. "For me anyway. I care about you, Christopher. Not just as Sophia's father or as my husband on paper, but as you." Christopher stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the conflict in his green eyes. "I care about you too. More than I thought I could care about anyone after Isabella." They stood in the hallway, the weight of their confessions hanging between them. Amelia could feel her pulse in her throat as Christopher reached up to touch her cheek gently. "I don't know how to do this," he said softly. "I don't know how to love someone new without feeling like I'm betraying the person I lost." "You don't have to figure it all out tonight," Amelia replied, covering his hand with hers. "We can take it one day at a time. See what develops naturally. And if what develops is real love? Not just gratitude or companionship, but real, lasting love." Amelia's breath caught. "Then maybe we'll be the luckiest people in the world. Maybe we'll have found something beautiful in the most unexpected place." Christopher leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender and sweet that it made Amelia's eyes sting with tears. "Thank you," he whispered against her skin, "for bringing light back into our lives. For loving Sophia. For being patient with me while I figure out how to love again." As they said goodnight and went to their separate bedrooms, both of them knew that they had crossed a line. The arrangement was becoming something else, something that couldn't be contained by contracts or business logic. They were becoming a real family, with all the messy, complicated, wonderful emotions that came with it. And for the first time since Isabella's death, Christopher allowed himself to believe that it might be possible to love again without losing the love he'd had before. Some hearts were big enough for both. Some families were built by choice as much as by blood. And sometimes, the most beautiful love stories began with the most practical arrangements. 3 weeks after their zoo outing, Christopher's mother announced she was coming for a visit. The news arrived via a terse phone call that Amelia overheard from the next room, Christopher's voice growing more strained with each response of "Yes, mother," and "Of course, mother." "How long is she staying?" Amelia asked after he hung up the phone. They were in his study, where she had been helping him organize Sophia's school event calendar. "A week," Christopher said grimly. "She wants to assess the situation," as she put it. "The situation being me?" "The situation being our marriage. Mother has very strong opinions about family legacy and appropriate matches for Romano men." A chill ran down Amelia's spine. "And I'm not an appropriate match?" Christopher looked at her with what might have been guilt. "According to my mother's social standards, you lack the proper background, connections, and breeding that she believes the Romano name requires." "Breeding?" Amelia's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Like I'm a horse?" "Amelia, you have to understand, my mother comes from a different generation. She married my father when he was still struggling, and she's never forgotten how hard it was to be accepted by Chicago society. She thinks she's protecting our family by maintaining certain standards. Standards that I don't meet." Christopher reached for her hand, but Amelia pulled away. "It doesn't matter what she thinks. You're my wife. You're Sophia's stepmother. You belong in this family regardless of my mother's approval." But even as he said the words, Amelia could hear the doubt in his voice. She had learned to read Christopher's expressions over the past 2 months, and right now he looked like a man preparing for battle rather than a man confident in his choices. "What exactly did you tell her about our arrangement?" Amelia asked quietly. "I told her I married you because I loved you and wanted you to be part of our family." The lie hit Amelia like a physical blow. Of course he had to lie about the nature of their marriage, but hearing him say, "I told her I loved you," in that clinical tone, as if love were just another business strategy, made her chest ache with unexpected pain. "Right," she said, forcing her voice to stay level. "So for the next week, we need to convince your mother that we're madly in love." "It won't be that hard," Christopher said, not meeting her eyes. "We've gotten quite good at looking like a family." Looking like a family. Not being a family, just looking like one. The distinction felt crucial, and it reminded Amelia that no matter how comfortable she had become in this house, No matter how real her feelings for Christopher and Sophia had grown, she was still playing a role. Margaret Romano arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in a chauffeur-driven Mercedes, dressed in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Amelia's old annual salary. She was an elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair styled in a perfect chignon and the kind of posture that suggested finishing school and generations of inherited wealth. Amelia had chosen her outfit carefully, a sophisticated navy blue dress that she hoped struck the right balance between respectful and confident. But one look at Margaret's cool gray eyes told her that no outfit would be enough. "Mother," Christopher said, embracing her with what appeared to be genuine affection. "Thank you for coming. I'd like you to meet my wife, Amelia." "Mrs. Romano," Amelia said, extending her hand with a smile. "It's wonderful to finally meet you." Margaret's handshake was brief and cold. "Indeed. Christopher has told me so little about you. Such a whirlwind courtship, apparently." The words were polite, but the tone carried clear criticism. Amelia felt Christopher tense beside her. "Grandma Margaret." Sophia came running down the main staircase, wearing a bright pink dress and a huge grin. "I missed you so much." Margaret's entire demeanor transformed when she saw her granddaughter. Her smile became genuine, her voice warm. "My darling Sophie. You've grown so much since Christmas. Come give Grandma a proper hug." As Sophia launched herself into her grandmother's arms, chattering about school and her friends and all the things she wanted to show her, Amelia felt like an outsider looking in. This was Christopher's real family, connected by blood and history and shared memories. Amelia was the interloper, the hired wife who didn't quite fit. The first dinner was an exercise in careful politeness. Margaret asked Amelia questions that seemed innocuous but felt like interrogation. "And where did you attend university, dear?" "University of Michigan. I studied elementary education." "How practical. And your family background? Are your people from Chicago?" "My grandmother and I lived in Detroit. She raised me after my parents died." "I see. No other family?" "Just my grandmother." Amelia could practically see Margaret tallying up her deficiencies. No prestigious education. No family connections. No social standing. Just a working-class girl who had somehow managed to snare Chicago's most eligible widower. After Sophia went to bed, Christopher excused himself to take a business call, leaving Amelia alone with Margaret in the living room. The silence stretched until Margaret set down her teacup with a delicate clink. "You seem like a lovely girl, Amelia, but I think we should be honest with each other." "I'd appreciate that," Amelia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know what this marriage really is." Amelia's blood turned to ice. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Please. I didn't raise a fool and I'm certainly not one myself. Christopher needed a wife quickly for business reasons and you needed financial security. It's a tale as old as time, though usually these arrangements are made with more suitable partners." "Suitable?" "From appropriate families. With proper backgrounds. Someone who understands what it means to carry the Romano name." Margaret's voice was not unkind, but it was implacable. "Christopher is worth $4 billion, my dear. He needs a wife who can handle the social obligations, the charity galas, the political connections that come with that kind of wealth and influence. And you don't think I can handle those things? I think you're a sweet girl who's in over her head. I think you care about Christopher and Sophie, which I respect. But I also think you're not equipped for the life you've married into, and eventually that will become a problem for everyone." Margaret leaned forward, her gray eyes sharp but not cruel. "I'm prepared to offer you $10 million to end this marriage quietly. You'll have enough money to take care of your grandmother's medical needs and live comfortably for the rest of your life. Christopher will be free to find a more appropriate partner, and Sophie won't become too attached to a stepmother who was never meant to be permanent." The offer hit Amelia like a slap. $10 million. Enough to solve every financial worry she'd ever had, enough to give her grandmother the best possible care, enough to start over anywhere she wanted. And all she had to do was walk away from the life she was beginning to love. "I need to think about it," Amelia said quietly. "Of course, dear. Take your time. I'll be here all week." That night, Amelia lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, Margaret's words echoing in her mind. Was she really in over her head? Was she fooling herself about her place in this family? When she looked honestly at her relationship with Christopher, how much of it was real affection and how much was gratitude and proximity? The next morning, she woke to find Christopher already gone to the office and a note saying he had an early meeting. Sophia was having breakfast with her grandmother, the two of them laughing over some private joke. Amelia felt like a ghost in her own house. At lunch, Margaret continued her subtle campaign. Christopher needs someone who can be his equal in social situations. Someone who can host state dinners if his political aspirations develop. Someone who understands old money protocols. Christopher has political aspirations? Amelia asked. Margaret looked surprised. He hasn't mentioned the governor's office? Several party leaders have approached him about running in the next election. Of course, a politician's wife needs to be beyond reproach. No questionable background, no hint of scandal. The implication was clear. A marriage of convenience would definitely qualify as a scandal if it ever became public knowledge. That afternoon, while Sophia was at dance class, Amelia overheard Margaret talking to Christopher in his study. She's lovely, darling, but she's not right for you. Anyone with eyes can see that she doesn't belong in our world. Mother, that's enough. Is it? Christopher, you've built an empire. You have responsibilities beyond your personal desires. Sophie needs stability, not some experiment in playing house with the hired help. Amelia is my wife, not hired help. Is she? Really? Or is she a convenient solution to a temporary problem? Because if that's all this is, then it's time to end it before real damage is done. Amelia pressed her back against the wall outside the study, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it. Was that how Christopher really saw her? As a convenient solution to a temporary problem? My relationship with Amelia is not up for discussion, Christopher said, but his voice lacked conviction. Darling, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to protect you from making a mistake that could cost you everything you've worked for. Think about Sophie's future. Think about your company's reputation. Think about the legacy you want to leave. When Margaret emerged from the study, she found Amelia in the hallway and smiled with what might have been sympathy. 10 million, dear, she said softly. Think about it. That evening, Christopher was quiet during dinner, responding to Sophia's chatter but barely looking at Amelia. When Sophia asked if they could all go to the park the next day, he said he had work to catch up on. But it's Saturday, Daddy, Sophia protested. I'm sorry, Princess. Important meetings. After Sophia went to bed, Christopher headed toward his study without their usual goodnight conversation. Amelia caught up to him in the hallway. Are you avoiding me? Of course not. I just have a lot to deal with right now. Your mother made me an offer today. Christopher stopped walking. What kind of offer? $10 million to end our marriage quietly. For a long moment, Christopher said nothing. Then, and what did you tell her? I told her I'd think about it. Something flickered across Christopher's face. Pain maybe, or relief. Amelia couldn't tell which. Maybe you should, he said quietly. Think about it, I mean. Mother's not wrong about everything. You didn't sign up for the life that comes with being married to me. The scrutiny, the social obligations, the constant judgment about whether you're good enough or appropriate enough. Is that what you think? That I'm not good enough? I think you deserve better than this. Better than a marriage that started as a business arrangement. Better than having to prove yourself to people like my mother for the rest of your life. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. And what about what we've built? What about the feelings that have developed between us? What if those feelings are just gratitude? Companionship? What if we're both confusing proximity with love? The question hung in the air between them like a blade. Because it was the same question Amelia had been asking herself since Margaret's arrival. I don't know, she whispered. I thought what I felt was real, but maybe I've been fooling myself. Maybe we both have been. They stood in the hallway 2 feet apart but feeling like strangers again. All the progress they had made, all the connections they had built, seemed to crumble under the weight of Margaret's disapproval and their own doubts. I should go, Amelia said finally. This was a mistake from the beginning. Your mother's right, I don't belong in your world. But even as she said the words, her heart was breaking. Because somewhere along the way this house had begun to feel like home. Christopher had begun to feel like her partner. Sophia had begun to feel like her daughter. And walking away from all of that, even with $10 million as consolation, felt like the hardest thing she had ever been asked to do. Maybe that would be best, Christopher said, his voice hollow. For everyone. As Amelia walked to her room, she heard Sophia calling for her from upstairs. Amelia? Can you come read my bedtime story? But instead of answering, Amelia closed her bedroom door and began to pack her things. Because maybe Margaret Romano was right. Maybe some dreams were too big, some gaps too wide to bridge. Maybe love really wasn't enough after all. Amelia had been packing for an hour when she heard the soft knock on her bedroom door. She expected it to be Christopher, finally ready to have the conversation they should have had days ago. Instead, a small voice called out, Amelia? Are you in there? She opened the door to find Sophia standing in the hallway wearing her favorite pink pajamas, holding her stuffed dragon and looking confused. "Why didn't you come read my story tonight?" Sophia asked, noticing the half-packed suitcase on the bed behind Amelia. "And why are you putting your clothes in the suitcase? Are we going on a trip?" Amelia's throat tightened. She had been so focused on her own pain and Margaret's criticisms that she hadn't thought about how to explain this to Sophia. How do you tell a 6-year-old that the mother figure she's grown to love is leaving because she doesn't fit into their world? "Come sit with me, sweetie," Amelia said, settling on the edge of her bed and pulling Sophia into her lap. "Are you going away?" Sophia asked directly, the way children do when they sense adults are trying to protect them from difficult truths. "I might need to," Amelia said carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that seem right at the time, but then they realize maybe they made a mistake." "What mistake did you make?" "I thought I could be the kind of mother you needed. But maybe I'm not good enough at it." Sophia pulled back to look at Amelia with serious green eyes that reminded her so much of Christopher's. "That's silly. You're the best mother ever." "But Sophia, I'm not really your mother. You're just what?" Amelia struggled for words. How could she explain the difference between loving someone and being qualified to love them? Between feeling like family and actually belonging to one? "Grandma Margaret thinks I'm not the right person to take care of you and your daddy," Amelia said finally. "Grandma Margaret is wrong." The certainty in Sophia's voice was startling. "Honey, your grandmother loves you very much and she knows about these things. She knows about fancy parties and which fork to use and how to talk to important people," Sophia interrupted. "But she doesn't know about the important stuff." "What important stuff?" "Like how you sing to me when I have bad dreams. And how you help me with my homework even when I get frustrated. And how you laugh when I tell you my silly jokes. And how you make Daddy smile again." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "Those are important things. The most important things. And you know what else?" "What else?" "My first mommy used to tell me stories about how families are made. She said some families are made when babies are born, but other families are made when hearts choose each other. She said the heart kind of family is just as real as the blood kind of family." The wisdom in Sophia's words took Amelia's breath away. "Your first mommy was very smart." "She was. And she would have liked you, Amelia. She would have been happy that we chose you to be in our heart family." Sophia curled against Amelia's chest, apparently satisfied that she had solved the problem with 6-year-old logic. But her next words made Amelia's decision for her. "Please don't leave me. I know Daddy's been sad since Grandma Margaret came, and I know she said mean things to you because I heard her talking to Mrs. Henderson about inappropriate matches. But I need you, Amelia. And Daddy needs you too, even if he's too scared to say so." "Scared of what?" "Scared that if he loves you, it means he doesn't love my first mommy anymore. But that's silly too because hearts can love lots of people at the same time." Out of the mouths of babes, Amelia thought. This child understood something that the adults in her life were struggling to accept. "You're right," Amelia said, kissing the top of Sophia's head. "Hearts can love lots of people at the same time. And you know what? I'm not going anywhere. This is my family now and families stick together. Even when mean grandmas try to make them not stick together? Especially then." The next morning, Amelia unpacked her suitcase and put on her best dress, a bold maroon that made her feel confident and strong. If Margaret Romano wanted to play games about who belonged in this family, then it was time for Amelia to stop apologizing for her place in it. She found Margaret and Christopher having coffee in the morning room, their conversation stopping abruptly when she entered. "Good morning," Amelia said pleasantly. "Margaret, could I speak with you privately? There's something I'd like to discuss about your generous offer." Margaret looked pleased, probably assuming Amelia was ready to accept the $10 million and disappear. "Of course, dear. Christopher, would you excuse us?" Christopher looked between them with something that might have been concern, but he left without comment. "I've been thinking about what you said," Amelia began once they were alone. "About how I don't belong in your son's world. About how I lack the breeding and connections and social standing that the Romano name requires." "I'm glad you're being realistic about the situation," Margaret replied. "Oh, I am. Very realistic. Which is why I'm declining your offer." Margaret's carefully composed expression flickered with surprise. "I beg your pardon?" "I said no. I'm not taking your money and I'm not leaving this family." "My dear girl, I don't think you understand." "Actually, I understand perfectly." Amelia sat down across from Margaret, her posture straight and confident. "You think I'm some gold-digging opportunist who trapped your son into a marriage he doesn't really want. You think I'm going to embarrass your family name and hold back Christopher's career ambitions? That's rather blunt, but yes. Here's what you don't understand, Margaret. I didn't marry your son for his money. I married him because my grandmother was dying and I would have done anything to save her. And yes, it started as a business arrangement, but it became something else. Something real. Arrangements like this don't become real, dear. They become complicated. You're wrong. I love your son. Not his money, not his social status, not his business empire. I love the man who stays up all night when Sophia has nightmares. I love the man who works 16-hour days not to make more money, but because he genuinely wants to help people. I love the man who's afraid to be happy again because he thinks it dishonors his late wife's memory. Margaret was quiet for a moment, studying Amelia with new interest. And I love Sophia like she's my own child, Amelia continued. Not because I'm being paid to, but because she's funny and smart and brave and everything good about this family. She chose me, Margaret. She chose to love me and trust me and call me her new mommy. And I'm not going to abandon her just because you don't think I'm fancy enough. You have no idea what kind of scrutiny comes with being married to a man like Christopher. Then teach me. The words surprised them both. If you really care about this family's reputation, then help me learn what I need to know instead of trying to drive me away. Show me how to host the dinner parties and navigate the charity galas and handle the social obligations. I'm not too proud to learn. Margaret leaned back in her chair, reassessing. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A weak girl who would take the money and run at the first sign of difficulty. I'm not weak, Margaret. I'm from Detroit. We don't run from difficult things. We figure out how to handle them. A small smile tugged at the corner of Margaret's mouth. My husband was from Boston. Working class. When I first brought him home to meet my parents, they offered him money to stay away from me too. What did he do? He told them that their daughter was worth fighting for, and that if they wanted him gone, they'd have to do better than trying to buy him off. Margaret's expression softened slightly. It took them 2 years to accept him, but eventually they realized that his character mattered more than his pedigree. And now you're doing the same thing to me that they did to him. Yes, I suppose I am. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. I loved my son's first wife very much. Isabella was everything I thought Christopher needed. But maybe I was protecting a memory instead of considering what he needs now. Christopher needs to be happy again. And Sophia needs a mother who will love her unconditionally. I can be those things for them, Margaret. I am those things for them. Even if it means learning to navigate a world you've never been part of? Even then. I'm not asking you to pretend I have a pedigree I don't have. I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that love matters more than lineage. Margaret stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden, where Sophia was playing with a soccer ball while Christopher watched from a bench. Even from this distance, it was clear that both father and daughter looked subdued, nothing like the happy family they had been before Margaret's arrival. He's been miserable since Isabella died, Margaret said quietly. Functioning, successful, but miserable. These past few days since you've been pulling away, he looks the same way he did in those awful months after the funeral. He's been pulling away too, Amelia replied. Your disapproval made him doubt what we've built together. And what have you built together? Amelia joined Margaret at the window. Trust. Partnership. A safe space for Sophia to heal from losing her mother. A chance for Christopher to remember how to be happy. A family that chooses to love each other every day not just because of blood or obligation, but because we want to. They watched as Sophia kicked the ball toward Christopher, who made an exaggerated attempt to catch it and fell backward on the grass in a dramatic show that made his daughter giggle. For just a moment, the strain of the past week disappeared from his face. He used to play with Isabella like that, Margaret said softly. Before Sophia was born. I haven't seen him be playful since she died. He's remembered how to laugh since I've been here. Not all the time and not without sadness for what he lost. But he's remembered that joy and grief can exist in the same heart. Margaret turned to face Amelia directly. You really love them both. With everything I have. And you're prepared to spend your life proving to people like me that you deserve to be here? If that's what it takes. But I'd rather spend my life showing people like you that love creates its own worthiness. That families built by choice can be just as strong as families built by blood. Margaret was quiet for a long time, watching her son and granddaughter in the garden. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. I owe you an apology, Amelia. I've been so focused on protecting what Christopher lost that I failed to see what he's found. He found me. We found each other. And we found a way to be happy again without forgetting what came before. Yes, Margaret said simply. I can see that now. That afternoon, Margaret asked Amelia to join her for tea, but not to discuss money or departures. Instead, she began what she called Romano family orientation. If you're going to be Christopher's political wife, Margaret said with businesslike efficiency, you'll need to understand the social landscape. Who supports us, who doesn't, and how to navigate both. Political wife? Amelia asked. Oh yes, dear. Christopher may not have mentioned it, but several party leaders have been courting him for governor. With the right preparation, you could be an enormous asset to his campaign. As they talked through the afternoon, Amelia began to understand that Margaret's criticism hadn't come from cruelty, but from fear. Fear that Christopher would be hurt again. Fear that Sophia would become attached to someone who might leave. Fear that the Romano family legacy would suffer from what appeared to be an impulsive marriage. I'm not going anywhere, Amelia assured her. Whatever challenges come with being Christopher's wife, we'll face them together. Even if the press tries to dig up your background? Even if political opponents use our family against Christopher? Even then. This is my family now, Margaret. I'll protect it as fiercely as you do. When Christopher came in from the garden with Sophia, he found the two women deep in conversation about campaign strategies and social calendar planning. The relief on his face was unmistakable. Does this mean? He began. This means your wife is staying, Margaret announced. And she's going to need extensive training if she's going to be ready for the governor's mansion. Governor's mansion? Amelia looked at Christopher with raised eyebrows. We'll talk about that later, he said, but for the first time in days he was smiling. That evening, after Sophia was in bed and Margaret had retired to the guest room, Christopher found Amelia on the terrace overlooking the garden. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. For which part? For doubting us. For letting my mother's concerns make me question what I know is real. He sat beside her on the stone bench. I was scared, Amelia. Scared that caring about you meant I was betraying Isabella's memory. Scared that our arrangement had become something neither of us could control. It has become something neither of us can control, Amelia replied. The question is whether we're brave enough to let it. Christopher took her hand, intertwining their fingers. My mother was right about one thing. Being married to me won't be easy. There will always be people who question your motives, your background, your worthiness. Political life, if that's the direction we choose, will be even harder. Are you trying to give me another chance to leave? I'm trying to give you all the information you need to make an informed choice. Because, Amelia, I don't want this to be an arrangement anymore. I want it to be real. Completely, utterly real. Amelia turned to face him fully. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. Not because you're convenient or because you're good with Sophia or because you fit into some plan I made. I love you because you're brave and kind and you make me want to be better than I am. I love you because you brought light back into our lives when I thought we'd never see it again. Tears filled Amelia's eyes. I love you too, Christopher. I think I've loved you since the night you found Sophia and me sleeping in her bed after her nightmare. Since you looked at us like we were precious to you. You are precious to me. Both of you. You're my family now, Amelia. Not because of contracts or arrangements, but because of choice. Because of love. They kissed then, under the stars in the garden where Sophia had played that afternoon, and it felt like a beginning rather than just another step in their arrangement. It felt like two people choosing each other freely with full hearts and clear minds. When they broke apart, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. So what do you say, Mrs. Romano? Are you ready to be a politician's wife? I'm ready to be your wife, Amelia replied. Everything else we'll figure out together. From somewhere inside the mansion, they heard Margaret's voice calling out, Sophia, darling, come help Grandma plan the campaign announcement party. Amelia and Christopher looked at each other and laughed. I think your mother has fully embraced the situation, Amelia observed. Once Mother decides your family, she's a fierce protector. You'll never have a more devoted ally. Good, Amelia said, settling against Christopher's chest as they looked out over their garden, their home, their life together. Because I have a feeling we're going to need all the allies we can get. But for tonight, it was enough to sit together in the place where they had chosen to build their love, surrounded by the family they had created through courage, patience, and the radical decision to let their hearts lead the way. The morning after Christopher's declaration of love, the entire atmosphere of the Romano household shifted like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Amelia woke to find a single red rose on her nightstand with a note written in Christopher's careful handwriting. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for staying. Thank you for loving us back. She found him in the kitchen making pancakes while Sophia sat at the counter, both of them covered in flour and giggling about something. When Christopher looked up and saw Amelia in the doorway, his whole face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, and the endearment was soft and natural, not performative. "Good morning," Amelia replied, accepting the kiss he pressed to her forehead as she passed. "What's all this?" "Daddy's making celebration pancakes," Sophia announced. "Because Grandma Margaret said you're definitely staying forever now, and she's going to help you learn how to be a proper politician's wife, whatever that means." "It means your stepmother is going to be even more amazing than she already is," Christopher said, flipping a pancake with theatrical flair that made Sophia clap. Margaret appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking more relaxed than she had since her arrival. "Good morning, dear. I hope you slept well. We have a busy day ahead of us." "We do. Oh yes. If we're going to announce Christopher's gubernatorial campaign in 6 months, we need to start your training immediately. Image consultants, speech coaches, social protocol lessons, charity board introductions. There's so much to do." Amelia looked between Christopher and his mother with amusement. "You've both been planning my political education without consulting me?" "We've been planning your success," Margaret corrected. "There's a difference." Over breakfast, Margaret outlined her comprehensive plan for transforming Amelia into what she called campaign ready. It was overwhelming but also touching to see how invested she had become in Amelia's success. "The most important thing," Margaret emphasized, "is authenticity. Voters can spot a fake from miles away. Your strength is your genuine care for people, your teaching background, your understanding of working-class concerns. We don't want to change who you are, just help you present yourself confidently in new situations." "I appreciate that," Amelia said. "I was worried you'd want me to pretend to be someone I'm not." "Never. Christopher fell in love with exactly who you are. The voters will too." After breakfast, Christopher announced that he was taking the day off from work, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. "But Daddy, don't you have important meetings?" Sophia asked. "You and Amelia are more important than any meeting," he replied, ruffling her dark curls. "I thought we could go to Navy Pier, maybe ride the Ferris wheel, act like tourists in our own city." They spent the day acting like the family they had truly become. At Navy Pier, Christopher won Sophia a giant stuffed penguin at the ring toss game, displaying a competitive streak that delighted both his girls. Amelia and Sophia screamed with laughter on the Ferris wheel while Christopher pretended to be terrified of heights, clutching dramatically at the safety rail. "Daddy, you fly in helicopters for business meetings." Sophia giggled. "You can't be scared of a Ferris wheel." "Helicopters have motors," Christopher replied seriously. "This thing runs on hope and prayer." But Amelia caught him looking out at the Chicago skyline with contentment rather than fear, his arm around her shoulders as Sophia pointed out landmarks below. They were 150 feet above the city, but Amelia had never felt more grounded in her life. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Christopher led Amelia to his study. She had been in the room many times before, but tonight felt different. Tonight, he was inviting her in not as a guest or a business partner, but as his wife. "There's something I want to show you," he said, opening a desk drawer and pulling out a small velvet box. Amelia's breath caught. "Christopher. Before you panic, it's not what you think." "Well, it is, but not exactly." He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, clearly a companion to her wedding band but far more elaborate. "This was my grandmother's engagement ring. Mother brought it when she came to visit, thinking that if our marriage was real, you should have something real to wear." The ring was beautiful, an Art Deco design with a central diamond surrounded by smaller stones in an intricate pattern. But more than its beauty, Amelia was struck by what it represented. "Your grandmother's ring? She would have loved you," Christopher said softly. "She used to tell me that the best marriages are built on partnership, not just passion. She said love that lasts is love that chooses to show up every day, even when it's difficult." That sounds like her wisdom helped shape you into the man you are. It did. And I think she'd be happy to know her ring is going to someone who understands that kind of love. Christopher took the ring from the box. "Amelia Grace Washington Romano, will you marry me? Really marry me this time?" Amelia laughed through her tears. "We're already married, you crazy man. We're legally married. I'm asking if you'll choose to be married. Choose to build a life together based on love instead of convenience. Choose to be my partner in everything, political campaigns and midnight feedings and board meetings and school plays and whatever else comes our way." She held out her left hand, watching as he slid the ring onto her finger next to her wedding band. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. "Yes," she said simply. Yes to all of it. Yes to choosing you every day. Yes to building something beautiful together. Yes to being your real wife and Sophia's real mother and whatever else this crazy life brings us. Christopher kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I have one more thing for you, he said, reaching back into his desk drawer. This time he pulled out a set of papers. I had my lawyers draw these up yesterday. Amelia took the documents and scanned them quickly. They were adoption papers for Sophia. Christopher, I can't. This is too much. Sophie wants this. We talked about it this morning while we were making pancakes. She wants you to be her legal mother, not just her stepmother. She wants your name on her school forms and medical records and everything else. She wants it to be official that you belong to each other. Amelia's hands shook as she read through the papers. Legal adoption would make her Sophia's mother in every sense that mattered. It would give her rights and responsibilities that went far beyond their arrangement. What if something happens to you? She asked quietly. What if this doesn't work out the way we hope? Adoption is permanent, Christopher. I'd be her mother forever. That's exactly what we want. Amelia, whatever happens between you and me, Sophie needs to know that you're not going anywhere. She's lost one mother already. She needs to know that this time, it's permanent. And you trust me with that? You trust me to be her mother for life. I trust you with everything, Christopher said simply. My daughter, my heart, my future. All of it. They spent the next hour talking through the implications, the logistics, the beautiful reality of becoming a family not just in their hearts but in the eyes of the law. When they finally went to bed, it was with the understanding that everything had changed again, but this time for all the right reasons. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness and activity. Margaret had enlisted a team of consultants to help prepare Amelia for political life, but the lessons were woven into real experiences rather than stuffy classroom sessions. They attended charity galas where Amelia learned to work a room while genuinely connecting with people. They hosted dinner parties where she practiced managing complex social dynamics while staying true to herself. You're a natural, Margaret told her after a particularly successful fundraising event for children's literacy. You connect with people because you actually care about them. That's a gift in politics. But the most meaningful moments happened in the quiet spaces between the grand events. Like the morning Amelia found Christopher's coffee mug waiting for her with a heart drawn in foam. Like the afternoon Sophia ran home from school to share news about a good grade on her math test, calling for Mommy, without thinking about which mother she meant. Like the evening they all worked together in the garden, planting flowers that would bloom in the spring, planning for a future they would share. The adoption papers were finalized on a Tuesday in December. The judge who processed them was a kind woman in her 60s who clearly understood the significance of the moment. Mrs. Romano, she said to Amelia, do you understand that by adopting Sophia, you are accepting all the responsibilities and privileges of motherhood? That this child will be your daughter legally, emotionally, and in every other way that matters. I understand, Your Honor. And I accept those responsibilities gladly. And Sophia, do you understand what this means? That Mrs. Romano will be your legal mother from this day forward. Sophia, dressed in her best blue dress for the occasion, stood up straight and answered with 6-year-old solemnity, It means she's my real mommy now, not just my new mommy. And she can't leave me even if she gets mad at me or I do something bad. That's exactly right, sweetheart. When the judge signed the final papers, Christopher pulled both his girls into his arms, and Amelia felt the last piece of uncertainty fall away. This was her family now. Officially, legally, permanently. That night, they celebrated with dinner at Sophia's favorite restaurant, followed by ice cream and a trip to see the Christmas lights downtown. As they walked through Millennium Park, Sophia between them holding both their hands, Amelia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 8 months ago, she had been a struggling teacher with no prospects and mounting debts. Now she was a beloved wife and mother, preparing to support her husband's campaign for governor, surrounded by more love than she had ever imagined possible. What are you thinking about? Christopher asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Just, all of it. How scared I was on our wedding day. How sure I was that this would never work. How wrong I was about almost everything. Not wrong, Christopher corrected. Just unable to see the possibilities. Neither of us could have planned for this. But we're glad it happened anyway? I'm glad for all of it, Christopher said, squeezing her hand. Even the scary parts. Even my mother's visit. Even the moments when we almost gave up. All of it led us here. To the three of us walking through Chicago looking at Christmas lights? To us being a real family. To love that chose itself despite every logical reason why it shouldn't have worked. Sophia stopped suddenly, pointing up at the giant Christmas tree in front of them. Look, make a wish. They all looked up at the tree, its lights twinkling against the dark December sky. What did you wish for? Amelia asked Sophia. That we stay happy like this forever and ever. What did you wish for? Amelia looked at her husband and daughter, at the life they had built together from the most unlikely beginning, and realized she didn't need to wish for anything at all. I wish that we remember how lucky we are, she said. That we never take this for granted. That's a good wish, Christopher agreed. What do you say we go home and have hot chocolate by the fire? With marshmallows? Sophia asked. With extra marshmallows. As they walked back toward their car, toward their home, toward their life together, Amelia felt the deep contentment that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong. Love had bloomed in the most unexpected place, growing from an arrangement into something real and lasting and beautiful. And the best part was, this was just the beginning. Spring arrived early that year, and with it came the official announcement of Christopher's gubernatorial campaign. The press conference was held in the mansion's garden, with Amelia and Sophia standing beside him as he outlined his platform focused on education, healthcare accessibility, and economic development for working families. Amelia wore a sophisticated navy blue suit that Margaret had helped her choose, and she felt confident and prepared as she smiled for the cameras and answered questions about her role in the campaign. The months of training had paid off, and she found herself genuinely enjoying the challenge of articulating their shared vision for the state. Mrs. Romano, called out a reporter from the Chicago Tribune, what unique perspective do you bring to your husband's campaign? I spent years as an elementary school teacher in Detroit public schools, Amelia replied smoothly. I understand the challenges facing working families because I lived them. I believe that effective policy starts with listening to the people who are most affected by it. The questions continued for another 20 minutes, and Amelia felt proud of how well she and Christopher worked together, supporting each other's answers and presenting a unified front. When the press conference ended, Margaret gave her an approving nod. You were perfect, dear. Natural and authentic, but polished. The voters are going to love you. That evening they celebrated with dinner at home, just the three of them. Sophia was excited about the possibility of living in the governor's mansion, especially when Christopher explained that it had a swimming pool and extensive gardens. Will I still go to the same school? She asked. We'll figure that out if we win, Christopher assured her. But no matter what changes, we'll always be together. For the next 6 weeks, the campaign consumed their lives in the best possible way. Amelia found herself energized by the travel, the rallies, the opportunity to meet people from all over the state and hear their stories. Her background in education resonated with voters, and her genuine warmth made her a natural on the campaign trail. Christopher was a compelling candidate, articulating complex policy positions with clarity and passion. But more than that, the happiness in his personal life had transformed him into an even more effective leader. He was confident without being arrogant, visionary while remaining grounded in practical concerns. You two are magic together, their campaign manager told them after a particularly successful town hall in Springfield. The way you support each other, the way you clearly love each other and your daughter, it's exactly what voters want to see in their leaders. Everything was going perfectly until the phone call came at 2 a.m. on a Thursday in early May. Amelia woke to the sound of Christopher's phone ringing insistently. She heard him answer with a groggy hello, followed by a sharp intake of breath and what? Is she stable now? She was fully awake by the time he hung up the phone. What's wrong? She asked, sitting up in bed. Your grandmother, Christopher said gently. She's had a heart attack. She's in the hospital in Detroit. The doctor says, they say it's serious, Amelia. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Ruby Washington had been doing so well on the new medication, her cancer in remission, her health stable. A heart attack had come out of nowhere. I have to go to her, Amelia said, already throwing back the covers. Of course. I'll call the pilot, we can be there in 2 hours. But the campaign. Forget the campaign. Your grandmother needs you. We need to be there. By dawn, they were in Detroit, sitting in the cardiac intensive care unit at Henry Ford Hospital. Ruby was unconscious, connected to more machines than Amelia could count. The doctor, a kind woman about Amelia's age, explained that Ruby had suffered a massive heart attack complicated by her previous cancer treatments. The chemotherapy she received weakened her heart muscle, Dr. Martinez explained gently. Combined with her age and the stress her body has been under, this attack was severe. We're doing everything we can, but the next 48 hours will be critical. Amelia felt numb as she listened to the medical details, the percentages of survival, the treatment options. This was the woman who had raised her, who had sacrificed everything to give Amelia opportunities for education and a better life. The thought of losing her was unbearable. Christopher was immediately in crisis management mode, but not for the campaign. He arranged for them to stay at a hotel near the hospital, cleared both their schedules indefinitely, and somehow managed to have Sophia brought to Detroit by Margaret so their daughter wouldn't be separated from them during this difficult time. But what about your campaign events? Amelia asked as they sat in the hospital waiting room that first day. You have 3 fundraisers this week and the debate preparation. None of that matters right now, Christopher said firmly. Your grandmother is family. This is where we need to be. Sophia, who had flown in with Margaret that afternoon, was unusually quiet as they explained that great-grandma Ruby was very sick. She had only met Ruby a few times, but she understood that this was the woman who had raised Amelia, who had been her family before the Romanos became her family. Is she going to die? Sophia asked with 6-year-old directness. We don't know, sweetie, Amelia said honestly. The doctors are working very hard to help her get better. Can I see her? The ICU didn't normally allow children, but Dr. Martinez made an exception after seeing how much Sophia's presence comforted Amelia. They went in together, Sophia holding Amelia's hand tightly as they approached Ruby's bed. Ruby looked so small and frail surrounded by all the medical equipment. Her usually vibrant personality was hidden under sedation and the steady beep of monitors. Sophia stared for a moment, then gently placed her stuffed dragon on the bedside table. This is Smokey, she whispered even though Ruby couldn't hear her. He helps with bad dreams and being scared. Maybe he can help great-grandma Ruby too. Over the next 3 days, their makeshift family took shifts at Ruby's bedside. Christopher proved to be surprisingly good at hospital vigils, bringing coffee and sandwiches, talking quietly with doctors, and handling the logistics that Amelia was too emotionally overwhelmed to manage. Margaret arrived on the second day, not to pressure them about campaign obligations, but to help however she could. She sat with Ruby while Amelia took breaks, and she kept Sophia entertained with quiet activities in the waiting room. This is what family does, Margaret told Amelia when she tried to apologize for disrupting everyone's lives. We show up for each other in crisis. No apologies needed. On the evening of the 3rd day, Ruby opened her eyes for the first time. She was weak and confused, but she was conscious. When she saw Amelia sitting beside her bed, she managed a small smile. My beautiful girl, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You came. Of course I came, Grandma. I'll always come. Ruby's eyes moved around the room, taking in Christopher standing at the foot of her bed, and Sophia sleeping in a chair with her dragon clutched to her chest. Your family, Ruby said. Yes, Grandma. My family. Good. I was worried you married him just for the money. Amelia laughed through her tears. I did marry him for the money, Grandma. But I stayed for love. Smart girl. Always were smart. Ruby's eyes found Christopher. You take care of my granddaughter. Yes, ma'am, Christopher replied seriously. With my life. And you, Ruby looked back at Amelia, you take care of that little girl. She needs you. I will, Grandma. I promise. Ruby nodded weakly and closed her eyes again, but this time it was the peaceful sleep of recovery rather than the frightening unconsciousness of crisis. Over the next week, Ruby's condition steadily improved. The heart attack had damaged some of her heart muscle, but she was stable and responding well to treatment. The doctors were optimistic about her long-term prognosis with proper medication and lifestyle modifications. She's tougher than she looks, Dr. Martinez said with admiration. She's got something to fight for. Christopher had been fielding calls from their campaign team throughout the hospital stay, but he'd refused to leave Detroit until Ruby was out of danger. When it became clear that she was going to recover, Amelia expected him to be anxious to get back to the campaign trail. Instead, he surprised her. What would you think about taking a few more days here? He asked as they sat in Ruby's hospital room, watching her share animal crackers with Sophia. I know we need to get back to the campaign, but I feel like we should really make sure she's okay. Christopher, you've already lost a week. Your opponents are probably gaining ground. Let them. This is more important. Amelia looked at her husband with renewed amazement. The man she had married as a business arrangement had become someone who understood that family came before ambition, that love required presence during the difficult times as well as the easy ones. Besides, Christopher continued with a smile, I think Ruby would like to get to know Sophia better. And Sophia could benefit from hearing stories about your childhood from someone who was actually there. They ended up staying in Detroit for 2 full weeks. Christopher worked remotely when necessary, but mostly he devoted himself to being present for his family. He learned to navigate Ruby's neighborhood, bringing her favorite foods from local restaurants. He listened to her stories about raising Amelia, about the struggles and triumphs of their early years together. That girl was determined from the day she could talk, Ruby told him one afternoon. Always wanting to help everyone, always believing she could fix things if she just worked hard enough. She still does that, Christopher replied. It's one of the things I love most about her. You really do love her, don't you? This isn't just about business convenience. Christopher looked across the room where Amelia was helping Sophia with a puzzle. Mrs. Washington, I love your granddaughter more than I thought it was possible to love someone after losing my first wife. She brought light back into our lives when I thought we'd never see it again. Good, Ruby said with satisfaction. She deserves to be loved like that. When they finally returned to Chicago, something fundamental had shifted in their family dynamic. The crisis had tested their bonds and proved them unbreakable. Christopher had shown that his commitment to Amelia extended far beyond their original arrangement, that he was willing to sacrifice professional opportunities to support her emotionally. Amelia had seen him at his most caring and selfless, understanding fully for the first time that his love for her was deep and genuine. And Sophia had experienced what it meant to be part of a family that showed up for each other no matter what, that put relationships above everything else. The campaign resumed with renewed energy, but also with a clearer sense of priorities. When reporters asked about the 2-week break, Christopher was honest about why they had taken time away. Family comes first, he said at a press conference. Always. That's not just a campaign slogan for us, it's how we live our lives. The response from voters was overwhelmingly positive. People respected a candidate who backed up his family values rhetoric with real actions. Amelia's devotion to her grandmother resonated with voters who had aging parents of their own, and Christopher's willingness to pause his campaign to support his wife showed the kind of character people wanted in their governor. The poll numbers actually went up while we were gone, their campaign manager reported with amazement. Turns out voters like authenticity more than constant visibility. But the most important outcome of those 2 weeks in Detroit wasn't political. It was the certainty that their family could weather any storm, that their love was strong enough to handle whatever challenges life might bring. Ruby made a full recovery and moved to a beautiful assisted living facility in Chicago so she could be closer to her new family. She became an enthusiastic campaigner, speaking at senior centers about her granddaughter's qualifications and Christopher's character. That man dropped everything to sit in a hospital waiting room for a woman he barely knew, she would tell anyone who would listen. That's the kind of person you want making decisions that affect your family. The test had revealed the true strength of their bonds. They weren't just playing at being a family anymore, not even convincingly performing the roles. They were a family forged by choice and strengthened by crisis, ready to face whatever the future might bring together. 1 year later, Amelia stood in the same cathedral where their journey had begun, but everything was different now. Instead of the red dress of terror and uncertainty, she wore a flowing cream-colored gown that made her feel like a princess. Instead of trembling hands and a racing heart filled with fear, she felt nothing but joy and anticipation. Today was their vow renewal ceremony, a celebration of the real love that had grown from their practical arrangement. Christopher had suggested it 6 months after Ruby's recovery, when they were sitting in the garden watching Sophia play with the neighborhood children who had become her close friends. I want to marry you again, he had said suddenly. Really marry you this time. With all our family and friends there, with vows that mean something, with the whole world knowing that we chose each other. We already had the big wedding, Amelia had replied, but she was smiling. We had the performance. I want the real thing. Now, as the cathedral doors opened and she saw the hundreds of people who had come to celebrate with them, Amelia marveled at how much their lives had expanded. There were Christopher's business associates and political supporters, but also teachers from her old school in Detroit, neighbors from Ruby's assisted living facility, parents from Sophia's class, campaign volunteers who had become genuine friends. Ruby sat in the front row in her wheelchair, looking elegant in royal blue and beaming with pride. Beside her sat Margaret, who had become not just an ally but a true friend and mother figure to Amelia. The two older women had bonded over their shared devotion to the Romano family and their determination to see Christopher win the governor's race in November. But it was Sophia who made Amelia's heart soar. Her daughter, now 7 years old and radiant in her flower girl dress of soft pink, was practically bouncing with excitement as she waited at the altar with her basket of rose petals. This time there was no sign reading, "Welcome home, new mommy," because Amelia wasn't new anymore. She was just mommy, legally and completely and forever. Christopher stood at the altar looking impossibly handsome in his midnight blue tuxedo, but more than that, he looked happy. Genuinely, deeply, radiantly happy in a way that would have been impossible during their first ceremony. When he saw her walking down the aisle, his smile was so bright it made her laugh out loud with pure joy. This time, there was no fear, no hesitation, no business arrangement disguised as romance. This time, it was simply two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way, choosing to celebrate the love they had built together. If you're feeling as emotional as I am writing this beautiful conclusion, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what your favorite part of Christopher and Amelia's journey has been. Your support means everything to me, and I love hearing from you about these heartwarming stories. Dearly beloved, Father Michael began, the same priest who had married them the first time, we are gathered here today not to witness the beginning of Christopher and Amelia's marriage, but to celebrate its transformation. To honor the love that has grown between them, and to hear them make new promises based not on necessity but on joy. When it came time for their vows, Christopher spoke first, his voice strong and clear. Amelia, a year and a half ago I thought I was hiring someone to fill a role in my life. What I found instead was my soulmate, my partner, my best friend. You brought light back into our lives when I thought we'd never see it again. You loved my daughter as if she were your own from the very first day. You stood by us through crisis and celebration, through political campaigns and family emergencies, through my mother's doubts and your own fears about belonging. The congregation chuckled softly at the reference to Margaret, who nodded approvingly from the front row. I promise to love you not just in the easy moments but in the difficult ones. I promise to choose you every day, not out of obligation or arrangement, but out of genuine desire to build a life together. I promise to be the husband you deserve, the father Sophia needs, and the partner you can count on for anything life brings our way. Amelia's voice was steady but emotional as she responded. Christopher, when I married you the first time, I was terrified. I thought I was entering a business arrangement that would require me to pretend to be someone I wasn't. Instead, I found a family that loved me exactly as I am. You taught me that love doesn't always look like what we expect, that sometimes the most beautiful relationships grow from the most practical beginnings. She turned to smile at Sophia, who was listening intently to every word. You both taught me that families are built by choice as much as by blood, that love multiplies when you share it instead of diminishing. I promise to be your wife in every sense that matters, to be Sophia's mother with my whole heart, to support your dreams and share your burdens, and to never forget how lucky we are to have found each other. When Father Michael pronounced them husband and wife again, their kiss was sweet and joyful, full of promise for the future rather than uncertainty about the present. Sophia threw rose petals in the air with abandon, and the cathedral erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception held in the garden of their home under a canopy of twinkling lights, Amelia watched their guests mingle and celebrate. Ruby was holding court near the dessert table, telling anyone who would listen about how she knew from the beginning that this marriage was meant to be. Margaret was deep in conversation with several campaign donors, already planning strategy for the general election. Sophia was running around with her friends, her pink dress grass-stained and her hair wild with happiness. Are you happy? Christopher asked, finding Amelia during a quiet moment between toasts and dances. Impossibly happy, she replied. Sometimes I can't believe this is really our life. Believe it? We built this, Amelia. We chose this. Their first dance was to the same song they had danced to at their original wedding reception, but this time they both knew the words and sang along quietly to each other, lost in their own world despite being surrounded by hundreds of people. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Ruby pulled Amelia aside for a private moment. I'm proud of you, baby girl, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You took a leap of faith and turned it into something beautiful. I had good training, Amelia replied, squeezing her grandmother's hand. You taught me that love is something you do, not just something you feel. And you've done it well. That little girl adores you, and that man would walk through fire for you. You've got yourself a real family now. Later that night, after Sophia had been tucked into bed with excited stories about the party still bubbling out of her, Christopher and Amelia sat on their bedroom balcony, still wearing their wedding clothes but barefoot and relaxed. I have something to tell you, Amelia said, nervous excitement fluttering in her chest. Good something or bad something? Good something. Really good something. She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. We're going to have a baby, Christopher. Our family is going to grow. Christopher's eyes widened with surprise and delight. Really? Are you sure? I found out yesterday, but I wanted to wait until after the ceremony to tell you. I wanted today to be about celebrating what we've already built before we talked about what comes next. A baby, Christopher said wonderingly. Sophia's going to be over the moon. I think so too. She's been asking about little brothers and sisters for months. They sat in comfortable silence, contemplating this new chapter in their family story. A baby conceived in love, planned and wanted by both parents, a symbol of the future they were building together. You know, Christopher said eventually, when I first arranged our marriage, I thought I was solving problems. Giving Sophia a mother figure, improving my business reputation, creating stability. And instead I found everything I didn't even know I was looking for. A wife who challenges me and supports me and makes me laugh. A family that chooses joy even in difficult circumstances. A life that's better than anything I could have planned. 6 months later, Christopher Romano was elected governor of Illinois by the largest margin in state history. His victory speech, delivered with Amelia by his side and Sophia beaming from the front row, focused on family values, educational opportunity, and the importance of hope in creating positive change. My wife often tells me that the best things in life are the ones we don't plan for, he said to the cheering crowd. Sometimes the most beautiful outcomes come from the most unexpected beginnings. That's been true in our personal lives, and I believe it can be true for our state as well. 3 months after the inauguration, Amelia gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Michael Christopher Romano. Sophia was completely smitten with her little brother, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to bedtime stories. He's perfect, she announced to anyone who would listen. And he has daddy's eyes but mommy's nose, so he looks like all of us. Ruby moved into the governor's mansion with them, taking over the role of live-in grandmother with enthusiasm and energy that belied her 78 years. She organized baby Michael's nursery with military precision and regaled visitors with stories about 4 generations of strong women in their family. Margaret became the most devoted grandmother anyone could imagine, flying in from Chicago every few weeks to spoil both grandchildren and offer unsolicited but usually wise advice about everything from politics to parenting. On a quiet Sunday evening in the governor's mansion, exactly 2 years after their vow renewal ceremony, the Romano family gathered in their private living room. Christopher was reading a bedtime story to Sophia and baby Michael, who was 8 months old and fascinated by the colorful pictures in the book. Ruby was knitting in her favorite chair by the fireplace, and Amelia was curled up on the couch, watching her family with contentment. This was the life she had never dared to dream of during those desperate days when she was struggling to pay her grandmother's medical bills. A house filled with love and laughter, children who called her mommy without hesitation, a husband who looked at her like she hung the moon, and enough security to help other families facing the same challenges she had once faced. As the First Lady of Illinois, Amelia had launched an education initiative focused on supporting teachers and expanding access to early childhood programs. Her background in public education gave her credibility with voters and educators alike, and her genuine passion for helping children made her a powerful advocate. "Mommy, will you sing the dragon song?" Sophia asked as Christopher finished the bedtime story. "Of course, sweetheart." Amelia had written a lullaby for Sophia about a brave princess who befriends dragons and saves her kingdom through kindness rather than force. It had become a family tradition, and even baby Michael seemed to calm down when he heard his mother's voice singing softly in the evening. As she sang, Christopher caught her eye and mouthed, "I love you," across the room. After all this time, those 3 words still made her heart skip a beat. Later, after both children were asleep and Ruby had retired to her room, Christopher and Amelia walked through the mansion's garden, following a path lit by solar lights that cast gentle pools of illumination on the walkway. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if I hadn't made that desperate phone call to your attorney?" Amelia asked. "Sometimes. But then I remember that we found each other, and that's what matters. Not how or why, but that we did." "I used to think fairy tales were just stories for children," Amelia said. "But I think maybe they're instruction manuals for adults who are brave enough to believe in happy endings." "Is that what this is? Our happy ending?" Amelia looked back toward the mansion, where their children slept peacefully and their grandmother was probably reading in bed, where they had built a life full of love and purpose and joy. "No," she said with a smile. "This isn't our ending at all. This is our beginning." And as they walked back toward the house that had become their home, toward the family they had created through courage and choice and the radical decision to let love lead the way, Amelia knew that whatever challenges and joys the future might bring, they would face them together. Some love stories begin with love at first sight. Others begin with shared interests or mutual friends or carefully planned dates. But the most unexpected love stories begin with practical decisions that transform into something magical, with arrangements that become authentic, with business transactions that bloom into the kind of love that lasts forever. The virgin bride who had been terrified to say, "I do," had become a woman who said, "I choose you," every single day, building a family and a future on the foundation of kindness, hope, and love that had always been meant to lead. And they all lived happily, not ever after, but ever after, choosing each other, ever after growing together, ever after proving that the most beautiful families are built not just by blood, but by the conscious decision to love and stay and build something beautiful together.